Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, a dust collection modification. Well, small shop problems, and that problem would be my jointer. Now, I have a larger jointer that takes up a large footprint in my shop, and the dust collection is on one end of it. Unfortunately, with all of the other tools that end up being placed where they have to be around the shop, it blocks off the dust collection port. And I'll just pan away from me here for a second to show you what I'm talking about. And you can see how the flip top tool stand is almost right up against the edge of that tool, making it next to impossible to get at that dust collection port. Now, because of that, the only way that I have to hook it up is to physically pull the jointer out. Now, on larger jobs, this is not a problem because, you need the extra room to run the larger boards anyway. But sometimes when you have a smaller board where there's no need to pull the jointer out, it's a real pain in the neck to have to pull that thing out. It weighs a ton. So what I'd like to do is switch it to the other end. So on today's show, we're going to see exactly if that's possible or not. And, well, I guess we have to start off by taking off the access panels. Well, as with most jointers on the market, the dust collection system is a gravity feed style in which the cutters create the chips or the dust up here. They're dropped into this trough that you can see. They slide down here, and at the bottom end, at the back here, there is a 4-inch port which then sucks or draws away whatever chips have accumulated down in the bottom. Now, the volume is not great enough that it clogs it up, so your collector is more than adequate to draw that away. The problem is this slide is a very permanent fixture. This is not bolted in, but yet it is welded in place. And I don't really want to mess with the welds. So what the object is here is that we want to redirect the way that the suction works. And we're going to start off by removing the existing dust port and relocating it to the underside of our chute. Now in this case, the dust port is only held on with 4 bolts, and there are threaded inserts that are installed on the casing of our jointer, and we will most likely be using them a little later on when we cover up this hole. But for now, remove the 4 bolts and get this dust port off of here. Well, we can relocate this to the underside of our gravity chute all we want, and it's not going to mean anything to us unless we make an opening to allow our dust to fall down inside this unit. So for that, although it seems a little destructive, don't worry, it's going to be fine. We need to make a hole to allow our dust chips to slide down into our collector. And for that, it looks like we need a hole that is 8.5 by 5.5. So we're going to mark that out and test fit our dust shroud over top of that hole just to make sure that everything lines up correctly, and then we're going to cut it out. Well, there's tons of different ways that you could cut this hole out, but I'm going to be using a multi-tool with a metal cutting blade. Now, guys, all I can say is get some eye protection on and get some hearing protection, because cutting this tin is going to be loud and you don't want to damage your hearing while cutting it. So I don't think we need a massive video of me cutting a hole, but I'll start it off, get us started, and you guys can imagine the rest of the cutting. Well, at this point now, the hole is cut, and I'm just going to take a file and clean up some of these sharp edges. I don't want to, for starters, give myself an opportunity for stitches, and as well, I don't want to give an opportunity for something to be there that the dust can get hung up on, or the wood shavings can get hung up on. Well, now that you've got your hole cut for your chips to fall down through and everything is filed and cleaned up and you're happy with that, it's time to mark the holes to mount that existing flange. And for that, just hold it in place, use a marker, use the existing holes to trace where they go, and then get in there with a cordless drill or whatever you have and drill some holes to mount some bolts. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be bolting down through on this one, so that bolt sticking up through into that gravity feed isn't going to, again, give the chips something to hook on. So once you get the holes drilled, bolt that flange in place. And with that, our dust collection shroud, I guess you would call it, is now in place. So as the chips slide down here, they will now get sucked away down through the bottom. However, the way it sits right now, they're just going to fall out this end onto the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of scrap, probably 1/4 inch MDF for now. I'm going to duplicate these holes in it and bolt a piece of MDF onto here using the existing hardware that we had. I think I will be swapping that out for a piece of aluminum that I will paint, hopefully to match the cabinet and make it look a little better. But for now, until I get said piece of aluminum, I am going to just cut some MDF and cover that hole up. And as I said, this is only temporary. There will be a more permanent fixture or a piece of metal put in place later, but just for the sake of time, because I don't have that material, this is a temporary measure just to cover up that access hole. Well, the next bit of material that we need for this modification will be these. And what that is 4-inch dust collection ports. Now, we need 2 of them because what I want to do is I want to sandwich them on the sheet metal that is the end of our tool. But in order to do that, we obviously have to cut an access hole. And in this particular application, for my use, I need a 5-inch by a 5-inch hole. Now, it will be square to match the shrouds. If you are going to use a different type of shroud, if you are modifying one of your tools, make sure you measure, guys. Don't take my word on the measurements, because every shroud is different depending on manufacturers and where you purchase it. So make sure you measure that. So just like we did before, it's the same process. I'm going to use the same tools. I'm going to use the same hearing protection and eye protection. And we're going to cut that 5x5 hole in the opposite end of our jointer. Well, with our hole cut now, we just need to place our flange where we want it and mark out our holes for mounting. Now I've cut a scrap of MDF just to help me align everything the way that I want it. It's just a little extra helping hand in order to have everything looking right. So we'll just hold this in place, make sure it's just the way we want it, and then we'll mark our holes. Now, this next step is definitely not rocket science, as we will drill our mounting holes And then we will bolt our flanges back to back against our metal of our housing. Now, if you guys had a bunch of unwanted marker marks on your cabinet, like what I had from laying it out, you can use some rubbing alcohol to remove those. Now when tightening these down, guys, I've said it before and I'll just mention it here again. Remember, when it comes to the battle between plastic and steel, being the bolts that you're using, the bolts or steel will win every time. So do not crank on these. I put lock washers on the opposite side and we're just tightening them enough to compress the lock washers. If you're concerned about them coming loose or you're worried about vibrations, not a problem. Put some Loctite on one of those, or thread locker if you want to call it that. Now, with that portion of the installation done, there's only one thing left to do, and that involves some 4-inch dust collection hose. Well, I have an old scrap of 4-inch dust collection hose, and at this point, it's as simple as connecting the 4-inch hose from end to end, from the original flange that you've reinstalled in your gravity feed to your newly installed interior flange on the new end. So I don't think you need instructions on how to do this. It's a couple of hose clamps and a little bit of elbow grease, and that is all she wrote on this project. Now, before I connect the second end, I noticed that this is dragging the ground here. So I'm just going to cut this a couple inches shorter just to get it elevated above, just like that. So let's get that cut and then install it on this end. Well, I guess the only thing really left to do at this point is to put our access panel back on. And there you have it. A dust collection modification. Guys, this project all came about because there was a need in my shop where the dust collection was not accessible. And I've said it many times before on this show, and I'm going to say it again. If safety equipment, PPE, dust collection and that sort of thing, if it isn't easy to use and it isn't easy to access, you're not going to use it. And to be quite honest, guilty as charged, because quite often I'd run that one little piece or that quick little run just to joint the one edge thinking it's no big deal. You know what, it is a big deal, and that's what brought this project about, and that's what got me to switch things around and bring it to a side that's going to make it usable and easily accessible, and therefore it's going to make it that I will use the jointer with dust collection 100% of the time instead of only 90%. So guys, it's up to you whether you want to cut up your tools like this or not. that is a personal choice. You may not be a victim of a small shop and you may not have to do this. You may be able to rearrange things to make it so that you can use your dust collection. I don't have that option. So guys, that's it for another show. I have to say that this has quite possibly been one of the most difficult projects I've done in a long time. Not so much for the skill required to do it, but more so about the aerobics that were needed to do it, of up and down on the ground. I'm absolutely done. The heck was that? Get back here. Get back. All the way. There you go. Let's try it again. That's better. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click that bell so that you will get notifications of future episodes of the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. I really want to thank you for joining in this week. And I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays. Oh, I need a massage. I'm getting too old for this stuff, man. I really am.